The first product tool that I'm going to be talking about in this series, where I'm going to be exploring the different tools that I use in the course of my work as a product manager, would be Mixpanel. Mixpanel is basically a product analytics tool. It gives you eyes into what your users are doing within your product. Eyes enough for you to be able to make a decision that you could validate by having conversations with your customers, and even some decisions that you can go by, which it's enough validation. It's probably high up there in my favorites. I would actually rate Mixpanel a 3 out of 4 in what it does. Automatically, when users carry out different activities within your product, it tracks everything, and from there you can use the reports to make reasonable conclusions. Their documentation is also pretty accurate and true to reality. One thing I appreciate about Mixpanel is also the ability to anticipate where you need some guidance within the product, and they lead you to different documentation. But enough of the spiel about what it does. Let me show you guys how I use it. So if you go to their website, you can easily get started login. There's a free version that has a limit on the events that you can capture. There's a growth version, enterprise, and all of that. But with the free version, you can really get something started if you have a small product. Once you get into the Mixpanel interface, you have the opportunity to see some of their demo boards. But I'll walk you through how I use Mixpanel. There are 4 major reports. The first report that you have is the insights report, and it basically helps you to explore actions that we call events within your product by filtering, looking at counts, and looking at what users are doing. So typically, you can select one or more events, and even very recently, you can also select different cohorts of users and gain insights into different user profiles and user types. A typical event could represent an action within your product. So for example, in this case, you're seeing events like send message, landing page, create workspace, app install. They could be buttons, for example, within your product, and you would generate insights from how users are interacting with that particular action. So let's take sign up, for example. For a particular event or an action, Mixpanel gives you an opportunity to actually break down. You can do like a weekly active use on the sign up, and that way you can break it down and see the weekly active use. You see a chart and also a table that represents or enumerates the information within the chart. Break it down by weeks, and also see different kinds of charts. So if you're looking at things like total events, you can see it as a bar chart. I generally like seeing things as a bar chart for some reason. It just appeals better to me visually. Not only can you look at insights on one event, but you can also look at insights on different kinds of events. So for example, if you're interested in accounts created, you're able to look at sign up and account created, and that way you can already start to see that, okay, there's a difference between people using the sign up button and maybe something that represents accounts created, let's say on the total events. Another thing that makes Mixpanel Insights also, and all the reports do, is you have the ability to break things down by the properties of that event. So when events are sent to Mixpanel, you can break down by property. Property can be different categorizations for behaviors of your users. It can be from which city, from which device type, on which version, those kinds of things that represent different ways your users could interact with the same action within your product. And of course, that way it gives you more insights to understand. So for example, with sign up, let's break down by country. You can use those properties to filter out, or you can break down by those properties. So if you break it down by country, then you are able to see all countries broken down. So that's really what it is. You don't necessarily only have to include events and actions. You can also include cohorts of users if you have them created, which is like user groups that carry out different actions, and compare them. That's generally what the Insights report is. I use it a lot when I'm trying to understand initial assessment of how is this action performing in my product. Most times the insight report is where I start before I now start going into the other kinds of reports, which is just like an initial, where are things, what is going on with this event, what is going on with this action, what are my users doing, how do I want to break down and filter. And it's my most used report actually, because it's usually the one where you start, and sometimes I don't even take reporting beyond the insight report because I already get the information I'm trying to get out of the insights before like I take it further. Okay, so that's the insight report. I will go to the next report, which is in the order in which Mixpanel has, arranged their report, and I guess it's for a reason. The funnel report. So the funnel report is a report that helps you understand conversion and drop-offs. It's one thing to look at an action and say, okay, yeah, this action is done by this number of users in all these countries. Fantastic. But the funnel starts to tell you, well, is that everybody that could potentially carry out that action, or is there a form of drop off, especially when you want people to do things in a certain order of activities? Okay, you want people to sign up. When they sign up, you want them to connect XYZ. When they connect XYZ, you want them to create XYZ, and then you want them to purchase. That's your first step funnel. But what is the conversion process like within this first step process? That's what funnels come in. When you switch to the funnels report, you can inherit even the events that you've put in the insights, and then you continue with that as a funnel. The thing about funnel reports is you have to have a vision for the steps that you want the users to carry out. So this is an example of a funnel. Within this funnel, we're interested in landing page of, say, this product, to the download, to app install, to opening the app, and then signing up. You have the opportunity to add all the events that represent the steps in your funnel, ideally in reality, and see how users are progressing through the funnel. For you to do that, you just have to select the funnel steps as the kind of reports that you want to see. So here we can see that this looks like an app where users go to a landing page, they are prompted to download an app, install the app, and then sign up. You see that while overall from landing page to sign up, I have an overall conversion of 64%, but the information you need here is what is the step of my funnel that is converting the most, and what is the step of my funnel that there's the most drop off. So in this case, we can see that there's about 15% drop off between landing page and download page. There is about 7% drop off between download and app install. There's about 8% drop off between app install, app opening, and then another 9% drop off between app opening and sign up. So you might decide that, you know what, this is the step of my funnel that have the most drop off. The question here is now, how do I optimize the steps in my funnel and minimize this? If I take away one step, does it improve my overall conversion or not? Is there any step that is necessary that I have missed, or is there any steps that I need to add? One other thing that I usually get the benefit from the funnels report is the time it takes for users to get from one step to another, because it's one thing for you to see the conversion, but most times when you're looking at conversion, you're also trying to optimize for time to value. If it takes users 30 days to go from my landing page to my sign up page on average, then it doesn't matter that they convert, it matters that it takes them a while to convert. So one thing I enjoy from Mixpanel's funnel report is it calculates the average time between the steps for you to understand that while the conversion rate is about 84%, like in this case, it takes almost 6 days for users to go from landing page to the download page, which is a lot. So in that case, the decision may also be like, maybe we should not optimize for the conversion, maybe we should optimize for the time and retain that conversion. And those are the conversations that you bring to your product team to say, we are trying to solve XYZ problem, we have noticed XYZ with respect to the time and the conversion. We are trying to optimize for the time, because if we optimize for time, we get to value faster. Those are the kinds of things. Of course, the funnels, you're also able to filter based on the properties like we had on the insight report. You are able to look at your conversion window, let's say within a certain number of days. Let's say your product has a trial period of about 7 days, for example. Then you want to look at the conversion window for that trial period, because if users are converting from landing to sign up in 30 days and you have a trial period of 7 days, it takes away part of the value that the user should experience within the trial period. The time filter on Mixpanel also allows you to specify a date, so you're able to see the time within which you are observing that metrics. You're able to compare over a period of time to, let's say, the 30 days before that in this way. So you just select maybe compare to previous month. You're able to see that we've been doing pretty well on conversion compared to the last 30 days, but hey, this is 90% and this is about 70%. So the previous 30 days was lower, and now, so it seems like we're doing a lot better. So maybe there was an experiment that we ran to improve the conversion here within this period, and now we're at 90. So that's a good thing. So that's a way for you to also compare your metrics over a period of time once you've made a decision, and see how you're performing and say, actually, we were pretty steady on the other steps of the funnel, but the steps that we tried to optimize, we did well or we didn't do well. That's how I use the Mixpanel funnels report. The next report in Mixpanel I'm going to be showing us is the flows reports. Now, the flows report, I typically would use the flows report after I use the insight report. Basically what it does is tells you the path through which your users are flowing into that action. Where are they coming from to take this action? Where are they going to for the action? Most times you see that in cases where you have a particular action represented by an event, but is in many parts of your product. So you're able to say, if I have the create button in 5 different pages, which of the pages is leading to the most create action? Then in that way, you are optimizing for the place that users are going to carry out the action the most. How I'll do that is you go to the Mixpanel's flows report, and from there you're able to add, let's say, app install. And so with that, you're able to now say, these are the number of steps before and after. So let's say 10 steps before, 10 steps after. From there, you see that this is the action that I'm trying to observe for in A, app install. There's only one path into app install because 100% of the actions that are going to app install is coming from the download page. But then you see that from app install, about 91% go to app opening, about 0.05% go to tutorials, and this number drop off, which correlates with the funnels report that we saw previously. So it's sort of like a funnel as well, but it's a funnel that your users carry out, not necessarily the funnel that you've set. If you've decided on a particular order of activities within your product, the flow report will tell you exactly what your users are doing, not necessarily what you've done. So the flow report is also a way to validate the funnel that you think you've created. Are the users going through the steps within the product in the way that I intend, or is there anything to learn from how my users are going through the features within my product? And I get why it's after the funnels, because the funnel is what you intend, the flow is what your users are doing, which should corroborate with what you intend, or at least inform you on how to improve your overall experience within your product. Let's say join channel. Invite to channel is about 25%. So what are the other little known ways that users get into there? I see upload media. Okay, from the upload media, is there a join channel button? How do they get there? It also helps you to validate some other things that are happening within your product that you never even knew existed. Because sometimes I see some of these events that lead to a major event, and I'm like, really? Ticket resolved leads to join channel. So in that case, is our ticketing system, does it include a link that lets people join a channel? Those are things that you try to find, the little known ways, sometimes buried links in different parts of the product that you've probably totally forgotten about, and decide, is it doing anything? Do we want to keep it, or is it actually even doing a lot and want to promote it? So those are the ways I use the flow reports. The last report that Mixpanel offers, I think this is also my favorite report. So this is a retention report, because the whole point of what you do is to ensure that your users have an overall great experience and they retain. Hopefully they pay you in whichever way payment looks like for you. There are two main aspects of the retention reports. One, retain is basically how users stay, assessing the stickiness of your product or the features that you roll out. By default, you're able to see from one event to another under retain. Let's say in this case, from sign up to, let's say, any event within the product. How many days later do users come back to do event 2 when they do event 1? That's really the verbiage around the retention report. That's the first aspect of retention. There are different criteria with how you use the retention report. You can check on daily retention, you can weekly retention, you can check on monthly retention. I find that a lot of people find retention reports difficult to read. Maybe I'll do another video around that, but it took me a while to understand how to read retention reports, because I'm like, what do the dates here represent? What does this represent in English? So I could easily interpret this for you, because I understand what it means that in the week of June 18, 2020, 869 people went to the sign up button, and out of those, about 89% of them came to any event within the product within less than a week. It took me a while to be able to understand how to put those into words, so that I'm not just showing a chart to my team, I'm able to speak the language that the chart is trying to communicate to me, into people that quite frankly could not care about these tables. That's really what the retention report is about. The second kind of retention report is a frequency report. The frequency report takes in one event and it answers the question of how frequently do your users return to your product or that particular feature. So typically you would want to use a feature that people should interact with as often as possible. In this case, let's say send message, and I'm seeing the average retention over a 30-day period, but I'm looking at the weekly retention. So I'm seeing June 15, 2020, 22,000 people altogether went to send message in the week of June 15, 2020, because I'm looking at the weekly retention, and then about 25% of them did the same action, which is send message, for 2 days at least in that week. That's how to read this. And about 7% of them did the same action, send message, for 4 days within that week. So that's how to read this report. Why I find the retention reports very interesting is, apart from understanding how often people come to my product, the decisions around a feature. Is that a fair expectation of me to have of my users, or should I have a more realistic expectation in line with what the retention report says? Because it's a decision around how often do I want users to do this, and how often do users really need to do this. So if your product is like, let's say WhatsApp, that you expect people to interact and send messages every day, but then you're seeing that my retention report is majorly saying that people are sending messages every 3 days. Then it makes you start to think around, why are people not sending messages every day? Is that a fair expectation, or do I want to do more or improve the visibility of the send messages, or do I want to improve the functionalities so that people are able to find reason to send messages every day? Those are kind of the questions that this helps you to answer. Retention reports helps you to understand, one, the visibility and discoverability of your feature, and also potential for feature gaps where people come to a particular feature but they don't come as often because it doesn't really meet the needs that they're trying to address. So that's where retention reports come, and there's a whole lot that comes into making such decisions, but these reports just help you to have an initial understanding of those metrics, those key metrics. So let me go over those key metrics again that those reports help you to answer. So the first is the insight report, which just helps you to explore actions by segmenting them into properties, cohort, events, and user counts. The funnels report helps you to understand conversion and drop off between different steps that you have defined within your products, and also helps you to understand time to step or time to value. The third report that Mixpanel offers is a flows report, which helps you to analyze how users are naturally moving through your product and the paths that they are taking to get to key actions, and the paths that those key actions are leading them to. That's your flows report. It's kind of like a validation of funnels. Your retention report basically helps you to assess the stickiness of your product so that you're able to identify how many users are coming back over time and how frequently users are coming to specific areas of your product. So those are the major 4 reports that Mixpanel offers. I use all 4. It's usually my first place when I'm not necessarily sure how users are interacting with different features in my product. There are some other things that Mixpanel offers besides the reports. I will do a separate video talking about those, so watch out for part 2 of this video, which will talk about the apps that are layered on top of Mixpanel and how you could use those apps to make informed decisions that could change your product. If well used, could change your entire product strategy. I hope this was helpful to you guys, so thank you very much. I hope to do subsequent videos like this, exploring different tools that I use, how I use them, or like a preliminary understanding of how some of these tools could be helpful in your arsenal of products tools. I'll catch you guys in the next video. If this was helpful to you, please share with your product manager friends, and see you next time.